Hi, welcome to show 213. We are honoured today to be with the legend that is Joey J.
Sweet.
Yeah, we've got a fantastic interview coming up, and let me tell you, we realised that Joey is actually the creator of everything in this world.
Musically, that's right.
Musically.
Yeah. Anything that came out in the 80s in this country, and let's face it, a lot of it did.
Yeah.
This man is probably involved.
Yeah, absolutely the case. Absolutely the case. Thank you for coming in, mate.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Chris and Joe have been friends for a while now. We've just been hearing that Chris has been taking all his records away from him for some time. And we've probably played a lot of them on the show.
Yeah, we definitely have, yeah, one of the best record collections I've ever seen, and I had the pleasure of pilfering, but there you go. But this is one of yours, isn't it, that you made?
Yeah, we did this. I did this one with Soul to Soul, Phil from Soul to Soul, and it was done in my bedroom in West London.
Nice. Well, that's what it should be.
What year, mate?
This was around mid-90s, I think.
Mid-90s. Yeah. And it's called The Truth. So this is the album. There you go. So that's what we're looking for.
And there's a picture on the back of my sound system.
Look at that. Yeah, you got to see
Legendary
a legendary sound system, West London. There you go.
Yeah.
So let's go to the interview right now. Welcome, Mr. Joey J.
Greetings.
How's it going? Welcome to the Shed Shop. Good to have you in. We've been meaning to get you in here for about 3 years now, I think. I think we first discussed having you in when you were still at Acton Market. Anyway, always a pleasure. But in regards to the interview, let's start off at the beginning. How did you get into music in the first place?
Well, I was influenced by my dad, really, because he had one of those Grams,
Right.
you know, with the garage deck and stuff like that, so we used to play around with that. So he used to play those 78s back in
So
the 60s.
we're going way back then.
We're going way back from the 60s.
And what sort of stuff was he playing?
He used to get all that stuff, that commercial stuff, like, Nat King Cole,
Right.
Fats Domino,
Right.
that sort of stuff. But
And how did that affect you in regards to pushing you forward into sort of doing something with music? And when did you then start to sort of like think, maybe I could be doing something with this?
it was more sound systems, because my dad's Gram had like two 10-inch Celestion speakers
Right.
and a valve amplifier. And I'm playing around with this thing, I'm thinking, yeah, I need to find out how this works. So what I did, but enhance it in like a parties and stuff like that.
Right.
So it was around about 74.
Right.
I managed to buy myself a little valve amplifier and playing my friend's christening.
Right.
He said, "Oh, come and play in the christening." And it was in like a little room like the size of this shop here. And that was it. It was just bought two speakers, like two 10-inch speakers,
Right.
and started playing from there.
And what sort of stuff were you playing?
I was early reggae, early Johnny Clark,
Right.
Gregory Isaacs, stuff from like 73, 74.
So it was
Because
sort
it was
of,
more Lovers Rock era that time.
yeah, but I mean it was also sort of like fairly rootsy, I suppose. Some of
It
the
was
stuff that
roots,
was
Lovers Rock.
roots, lovers rock.
Yeah,
Right. Okay.
yeah.
And obviously being in Britain, that was what was
Yeah, that was
becoming
right.
fashionable at the time.
That's right.
And was this in West London? Has
Yeah,
it
it
always
was
been sort of Acton area?
Yeah, Acton area. We played at the COA Club, which is where Morrison's is today, or Acton Market is today.
Yeah.
It was a club you go upstairs and you step every Sunday. It used to, or Friday nights used to be Sir Jessa Sound. Me, I used to play with sounds like High Chess. It was good days, yeah.
And how many other sort of, sort of like the, I suppose, earlier sort of sound systems were going on in that area at the time?
Not a lot. A lot of them were more in Southall.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah, Southall was a big, because you had bands like Misty and Roots,
Of course.
and the guys that were in that band had their own sound systems. as
Right.
well. Yeah, so it was more.
Okay.
Southall area. I've done the school leaving party.
Right.
This was about 74, 75. And then from the school parties, people asked us, "Oh, can you come and do our christening, our wedding, and stuff like that?" So I was buying more equipment, like H&H amplifiers,
Right.
Goodman H&H speakers,
Right.
Tan Eyes, stuff like that, and the little pizzas. We used to go to a shop called Tandy's
Yeah.
and get all that stuff from there.
Right. What was going on at the time in London? I mean, how was the sort of situation? Because obviously the 70s were a bit dire for an awful lot of people. So, I mean, how did what you were doing, how was it affected by what was going on, I suppose, even politically?
It was emergence of black culture, I would say.
Mm.
That, you know, it was a Rastafari era, from Birmingham to Leeds to, you know, Wolverhampton, London. Most of the music was getting into Rastafari, you know. Black youths went to find out about their red, gold and green identity and the repatriation to Africa and stuff. So most of the music was about that. So we all, at that time, we built sound systems with amplifiers and extended them, played in dance halls and clubs to get the message across.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
so
did you have a
that's-
lot to do with like the other sound systems in, say, like Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Bristol, and all these places?
Yeah, we had a relationship with them. They would come down and play in London. We would go and play in those areas as well. So it was, you know, sounds like Shaka,
Yeah.
Coxon. You know, those sounds kept the link between the two, you know, the cities.
Sure. And was it just sound systems in the 70s that you were dealing with, or had you already started doing sort of radio at that time, or was that much later?
We didn't. We wasn't involved in radio at that time. We
Right.
only had people like Steve Barnard.
Okay.
He was great, but he was a DJ that wasn't in the clubs. You know, you get these radio DJs and you get the club people, and they were totally separate.
And in regards to your sound system, and what was the sound system called initially?
That time it was Great Tribulation.
Great Tribulation.
Yeah.
And so was the sound system mainly sort of like out in the open, or was it predominantly in clubs? And what sort of parts of London were you in?
Predominantly West London. Everybody
Right.
stuck to their areas. You know.
So would it have been Acton, Ladbroke Grove, Kilburn?
Not so much Ladbroke. It was more Acton, you know, Hanwell,
Neasden?
Southall. No, we didn't venture
Oh,
northwest.
right.
No, we kept it west. You know, Acton
Right.
Town Hall,
Yeah.
all the halls around West Ealing,
Sure.
the home of Greensleeves.
Oh, right, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So when Greensleeves started in '76, we played round the corner in a club called St James's Hall.
Right.
It was a church hall.
Right.
So that's where we kept mainly to local areas.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose that would have been the same for a lot of the sound systems
Yeah.
that were going on at the time.
Yeah.
Was there much rivalry?
Not really. The rivalry only came with the dub plates.
Right.
If you had the money and you were a big sound, like the Shackers and the Coxons and the Fat Mans,
Yeah.
they had more rivalry in bigger clubs.
Right.
And we would travel to those areas, South London, you know, like Catford, Moonshot Club, you know, New Cross, and we would travel from our areas to go listen to dub plates,
Right.
the bigger sounds. Yeah, that's what it was like.
And I remember you telling me before, obviously, during the 70s, I mean, reggae was coming out of England, especially at a really amazingly fast rate, even probably more so than Jamaica in some instances in the sort of sorts of stuff that was coming out. So I mean, and a lot of the artists would have come over from Jamaica, and actually some of them even stayed here and lived here, didn't they?
That's right, yeah.
I mean, how many of them did you meet, or would have come to your dances or anything like that? I remember you telling me a bit of a story before about being in a club and there'd been this guy over here, that guy over there.
It was more you see them in places like Phoebe's Club.
Right,
That was in Amos Road, Stoke Newington.
right,
You just get sounds like Fat Man playing there, Sir George, and Shaka. Shaka was the main one, Friday
Yeah.
nights. So when you used to go down, it was a 3-floor club.
right,
Upstairs was like the Lovers Rock area.
right,
In the middle is like a bar area where you put your coats in there. And then downstairs was Shaka.
right.
So you would get Rasta man and woman mixing with sweet boys, we call them.
Okay.
nowadays,
Are they all the guys into Lovers Rock?
Yeah. But they'd mix, but they would have their section upstairs.
Sure.
And we would have our section downstairs where Shaka was.
Right.
And you see people like Johnny Clark there, Bob Marley, you know, just hanging like normal people, you know,
Right.
Bunny Lee, all those people were down there.
Jeez. So, I mean, so obviously that's, you know, the 70s. How did it change sort of like at the early 80s in regards to obviously when Bob Marley passed away and stuff like that?
Yeah, just before Bob passed, we had the Lovers Rock era.
Mm.
And
And it was huge, wasn't it? Let's face
it
it.
was big. 'cause,
You know, it was
you
charted.
could
It
dress
was,
up.
yeah, totally. You know, Janet Kay, all of that stuff.
Yeah, it was a big scene.
Yeah.
But I wasn't into it. But I did go to the scenes, but I wasn't. I wanted to hear Rasta music,
Yeah.
steppers, and.
Yeah.
But it was a big scene, and that was like late 70s.
Yeah.
I would say people like Dennis Bovell and was big in that scene. The film Babylon
Yeah.
Yeah.
came, And then when Bob passed in '81, everything just suddenly changed. You know, you got people like Yellowman and Welton Irie, and for me, I went into that kind of.
Why do you think it changed?
Because they felt that Bob's music, Rasta music, and message music was making good money for Jamaica.
Sure.
But the youth growing up weren't really too into that.
No.
They wanted to break out and DJ, and so you got to, you know, the DJs run those things. Back in the 70s, it was more the singers.
Right, okay, so it was more about the artists who were selling in the 70s. Yeah. In the 80s, it was more about the DJs who were coming out and what they could play.
That's right. Yeah.
And so you didn't sort of follow the trend of what was going on?
I didn't too much. You had sound systems here like Saxon. To me, they were one of the biggest.
Yeah.
But they made people like Maxi Priest. You know, it was the DJ and the sound system. That was the lick. I mean, you had that in the early in Jamaica. You had the toasters, you know, like I Roy, You Roy, and all that. And then it got to the dub scene, the singers, and then it came to the lovers rock scene, and then it came back again.
Sure. So in the 80s, I guess music changed all over anyway, didn't it? I mean, obviously in the 70s, in regards to sort of like the you know, the sound systems, the stuff that was coming out. But let's not forget there was a lot of soul and, you know, disco that was sort of like around. Did that then start to influence the sort of stuff that you played in the early 80s? I mean, did it change a little bit?
I came off the reggae scene because of the change.
Right.
Not knocking that change, because it was a youth breakout to me. It was their thing, you know.
Yeah, and you were a bit old.
We know
So,
that feeling.
you know, I started to listen. Not listen, but I liked other music, you know, and I thought, well, I've got my sound system sitting there.
Yeah.
I could use it to promote other music, you know, like the disco scene. And,
Sure, boogie and jazz, I suppose.
Jazz, all that.
So tell us how that sort of came about, because obviously this is going to be sort of early 80s, and obviously, I mean, when did the Good Time sound system actually start? Sort of like, when was it first named that?
I would say I teamed up with my brother Norman J.
And when would that have been?
83, 84.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
We were doing Notting Hill Carnival.
Right. Which was big, but a lot smaller.
Time, yeah, we only had like 1-2 speakers at
right.
the time. And I'll do the reggae scene, reggae slot.
Yeah.
And then Norman would come in and start playing some soul, some funk and disco and that. So people were passing and stopped and said, hold on a minute, dub reggae and yeah. So we managed to get a mixture of crowds around our sound system.
Sure.
And that's how it all started.
And whereabouts in the Notting Hill Carnival were you originally pitched? Was it always in the same place?
No.
No, so it was just wherever you could be
Just where we can pitch, because we used to just go to somebody, knock on their door, say, look, can we use your power? Run a cable up there, give them a £5, and they give you the power for the day. It was much more freer.
Yeah, totally.
Now you pay £5 to use their loo.
Yeah, that's it. For a can of Red Stripe, maybe. You know what I mean? Okay, so you and Norman got together around about 83. I mean, what was he doing before that? I mean, obviously this is your interview, but just out of interest, I mean...
Norman was just buying records.
Right.
He wasn't really DJing.
Okay.
Buying a lot of stuff. We go contemporary down Hanway Street, and I'll go Daddy Cool's at Hanway Street.
Yeah.
So I always, when I go down there, I always see Norman. We met just music, you know. I used to buy stuff from Daddy Cool and him from Contemporary.
Right, okay. And what was the sort of stuff that was being played sort of like by yourselves in about 83? Because obviously it was getting a bit... I mean, even boogie and stuff was quite a commercial sort of sound, but it was nice. And so, what sort of stuff would you have been playing at the time? Would it predominantly sort of like just jazz funk? Because obviously this was before the rare groove scene sort of blew up and things like that. And
he played two-step.
Right.
Two-step, you know, like William Bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was softer music. It wasn't dancey stuff. But
Sure.
it was the Lovers Rock extended to soul. It was a soul version of it.
Of course.
Which I found was really pleasant, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it attracted a dressy kind of clientele.
Sure. I suppose also because people were getting a bit older as well, that, you know, people, you know, could afford to go out and do these things rather than it being like a youth rebellion. It was actually people enjoying themselves and going out and starting to like music.
Yeah.
So when did it start sort of, really kicking off for you guys? Because obviously you'd sort of...
Well, we started to get into warehouse parties because West End were throwing out blacks out of club. Well, not throwing us out, it wasn't letting us in. Like
Right.
WAG, Limelight, Busby's, they weren't letting blacks in too much, you know.
Right.
So we decided to take the scene out of the West End down to places like Old Street
Right.
and Shoreditch and those areas.
Which were not
London Bridge.
not full of trendy hipsters with
Nobody was
beards
there.
and
It was
coiffures.
derelict.
Yeah, right.
It was derelict. So most of the places you see there now, but it was all warehouses, all empty.
Right.
So we arranged, a place like Camberwell.
Right.
So I said to Norman, it was Norman, Femi, Young Disciples, let's do our own thing. So I had an old van
Right.
with Hutch's Removals written on it. And what we used to do was to hire generators, put them in the van, and just with the speakers, and just anywhere we found out, we just said, right, Norman, if you just tell people about it. So we should go down the West End and fly, leaflets.
Sure.
So all the people who used to rave in the West End started coming out of the West End into Shoreditch area.
Right.
Yeah, and that's how we started to get thousands of people.
And what was the sort of name of some of the parties? Because there was it the Chocolate Factory and places like that? Like some of the sort of like
There
warehouse
was places
parties.
like Shum, which was...
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and there was... oh gosh. It's hard to...
So, I mean, like Shum would have been sort of like Giles Peterson and all those
Danny
guys, Danny
Ramplin.
Ramplin and all that sort of stuff. So we're talking about
Mid-80s.
it's coming out. I mean, obviously the soul and the two-step stuff's still there, but there's other types of music that have been
That's
involved.
right.
Almost Balearic music.
Balearic.
You know what I mean? Like early house, I suppose. Or the precursor to it.
Yeah.
So, what sort of year would this have been? Like mid-80s to?
I'd say mid-80s, 84, 85.
Right. Okay.
Because you had those nights that was what was all special, because I was still just a young teenager then, but I'd started to creep into a few things. But they were special because it was such an eclectic mix of music.
Yeah.
I think once you got to the 90s, nights were so defined.
Yes.
And that was rubbish.
Where-
Then you could get a soul tune played next to a Balearic tune, or it's such a melting pot.
Next to Planet Rock.
Yeah.
Next to
That's
you
right.
know
That's
what I mean?
why all the warehouses that me and Norman did with Family Function and Young Disciples, we always made sure the warehouse had 4 or 5 rooms.
Right.
Different music genres, and everyone just had the mill from each.
So would have some of the other people, because I know that we've talked before, I guess like people at the time possibly Shaken Finger Pop,
Which was us.
which was you guys, Family Function obviously,
That's right.
and obviously we were talking like Derek Boland, Derek B,
Derek
he would have
B.
been around as well. And what was he doing at the time? Because obviously this was before hip hop really, in regards to UK stuff, or around the time that it was beginning.
He got on Kiss
Right.
around about that time as well. Kiss was just breaking out, and
As a pirate station.
and then he used to work at Bentley's in
Right.
Canning Town,
Right.
and Derek used to be the scratch DJ there.
Right.
He was, he was such a close friend to me and Norman, and
Yeah.
to hear that he's passing, it was
Sure.
it wasn't nice. But he's one of the best DJs,
Right.
because he can cut and scratch, and he's just the way he put things together, the mixing, he was just brilliant.
And I guess a lot of people that possibly would be watching this probably don't realise the stuff that he was involved in before he actually ended up having, singles that were quite commercial, you know what I mean, in the sort of like later 80s. So, I mean, around obviously this time in the mid-80s, you were saying in regards to Kiss sort of starting, how did you get into that? And what other people were getting onto Kiss at the time? Because obviously it was a pirate station.
It was fun.
And but
Huge.
but it was huge
Massive,
in regards to the appeal that it had and the coverage of music that was being played in London at the time.
Well, I think people like myself, Norman, we were headhunted because we wasn't commercial, but we were playing good black music at the time. So we were headhunted by somebody called George Power.
Right.
He runs London Greek Radio now, but he was a financier of Kiss.
Right.
And then he had Tosca and Gordon Mack.
Right.
And Tosca, he's a black guy. He used to come and pester Norman and said, look, I'm starting up a news station. You don't want to get involved with LWR. LWR was Tim Westwood was on that.
We'll get to Westwood in a bit.
But anyway, he says, you don't want to work on LWR. Look, we've got a news station called KISS. Why don't you come and work for us and stuff? Norman says, you don't know. Anyway, one day Tosca phoned up. I was at my mum's house and he talked to Norman. He goes, Norman, come down to Blackheath. He gave us the address. He goes, you're going to be on in the air tonight. Norman goes, what? He goes, no, come down, because one of the DJs is sick, Norman, we need you to come in. That's how he got in there.
Right.
So I went with him, and I think it was at Colin Faber's house, but I'm not too sure, in Blackheath. And KISS FM was born.
Right.
Yeah. I think it was 1985.
1985. And would it have been the same stuff that you were playing on KISS FM that you would have been playing in the warehouse parties as well?
Yeah, we took the warehouse party to on air.
And I suppose, obviously, having KISS FM, you could actually promote the warehouse parties even more.
That's what we did.
Yeah, totally. So you'd have even got a much bigger clientele. That would have grown. So it must have been pretty huge.
It was huge. There was one called Bear Wharf on Southwark Bridge.
Right.
Old building there. It's all done up now. We got over, I think, 7,000 people.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, because was it Paul Oakenfold was doing something over there? Might have been Paul Oakenfold. I'm not correct me for it. But somebody was doing something over the bridge.
Right.
The police stopped that one.
So
everyone came over the bridge to our one. Yeah, we got 7,000 people that went 3 big floors.
Right.
Yeah, we had Young Disciples there. Derek B was on one floor.
Right.
Couldn't control the crowd. We just let people.
So obviously, obviously you say like Young Disciples. So this was obviously before Acid Jazz was born as a label as well, wasn't it? So
it was before.
So this is so we're talking about the time where phrases like acid jazz, rare groove, and all of that sort of stuff would have come from what you guys were doing and the other DJs involved. And who were the other sort of like big hitters at the time who were sort of like playing out?
Well, Family Function were just young kids. That's Judge Jules and but Soul to Soul.
Yeah.
I'd say Jazzy really mashed it.
Sure. And he started playing at the Africa Centre at that time?
The Africa Centre.
Yeah.
Covent Garden.
Sure.
On Sunday nights you couldn't get in there.
Yeah. And did you play there as well, or were you strictly your own sort of system?
We kept our own, but when we had warehouse parties, Jersey would come in on them as well.
Right, okay. I mean, it must have been huge. I mean, you think about it, the stuff that was born out of this, like I said earlier, I mean, Soul to Soul just as a band or even a brand, you know what I mean? Good Times as a brand and stuff, Rare Groove, all the huge DJs that came out of it, like Judge Jules, Danny Rampling, Giles Peterson, all of these people. Yeah. So, I mean, it must have been a pretty exciting time. And,
it was.
Yeah. When did people start making their own records? Because it would have been happening at the time. Plus, also, you had the early hip-hop scene that was going on at the time as well. So I've got a couple of questions here. So let's go to the early hip-hop bit first. Tell us about Tim Westwood. How did you meet young Timmy?
Well, Tim met me because he wanted a sound system to do, and I had a big sound system, the Good Time sound.
And when would this have been? Again, around 84, 85?
Yeah, middle 80s as well. Because he used to work with LWR.
That's right.
Yeah. And he heard about my sound system from the warehouses. So when we were doing the warehouses, we used to play like really rare groove. Normally we used to play rare groove. We used to get like Cold Cut.
Sure.
I can't remember.
Oh, Matt Black.
Matt Black. Yeah. But it was Jonathan Moore.
Jonathan Moore, yeah.
So Norman and Jonathan Moore used to play, and I used to provide the sound system. So one day we was doing something in Paddington where they're doing all that Crossrail there.
Yeah,
That was all warehouse territory. And I was in the club, set up the sound, and Westwood was big in the hip-hop scene.
Even then, so obviously in the mid-80s. Yeah.
Who comes with some rep, must have been a rep for somebody, he came in, Tim Westwood, and I said, Tim, what are you doing here? Because I was at the door. He says, oh, Joey, I just come to, listen to the music. I said, Tim, you won't like this music because it's rare groove, it's all funky and this and that. I said, you're a hip-hop man. He said, no, Joey, I brought someone with me. It's a bald head guy. Shook him, can't remember his name, but we shook hands, and Tim went in there. It must have been about 10 in the night. So it was a little club because we only found a little. Tim didn't leave till 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, do you enjoy? He said, Joey, man, I thoroughly enjoyed it, man. It's the best night of my life. Hang on, no hip hop played that night.
Right.
So he must have gone away, and that's why I'm hearing all this cutting and scratching and James Brown and funky drummer in the hip hop music today. Tim must have had some influence, but I can say that night that he stayed probably 10 hours in that club, he must have got some influence from it.
Right. And so you did actually work with him after that, didn't you? He used to come over your house and have dinner.
Yeah. He came around a few times. He had a blue Ford Sierra, which
That's
was
in the program.
in Bad Meaning Good, yeah.
Bad Meaning Good.
okay. Yeah, he had a light blue Ford Sierra. He used to come on my mum's house.
Right.
And he used to have a flat in Fulham, just.
Sure.
Yeah, I used to go there. His house was like Fort Knox, but
Right.
respect to him, he was popular and he was big. And the black guys at the time were a little bit hostile towards him, so
Sure.
he had to protect himself.
Yeah.
But he would let me in freely. I would stay in his flat for a few hours. We'd listen, chat about music, and
Yeah.
the next gig that I'll set up the sound system for him.
Right.
And that's it. And the first one we did was the chocolate factory on Scrubs Lane.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, which was a pretty famous as warehouse parties go. It was one of the ones that I remember hearing about back in the 80s myself. Too young to go there, but you know. But and did you sort of? I mean, did you interact and sort of like work with him more than that, or was it just those sort of fledgling years? Or
We've done a lot more.
Really?
We've done the park. We've done Scrubs Park.
Right.
That time we had all the body popping guys and the spray paint guys.
Yeah.
Somebody named a guy called Scam.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember all their names, but
Sure.
wherever we played at Good Times and Tim Westwood, those guys came and they would spray out the place for us.
Yeah, well, I'm sure like people like the Chrome Angels and all of these sort of like early writers would have been there, definitely. And obviously this would have been the time when people would have been popping and breaking and stuff like that. So we're talking about
Big scene,
85.
the
Yeah,
breaking
totally.
scene
Yeah.
was,
Yeah, obviously, you know, what was going on in Covent Garden in regards to the hip-hop scene, I suppose, you know, it spills into each other, doesn't it, in regards to what you guys were doing. So, yeah, in regards to sort of like, you know, making music yourselves, I mean, obviously the sound system was so big. There must have been an explosion in about 86, 87 where people started getting records out, Acid Jazz as a label was sort of like made, and all of these people that were just DJs in warehouse parties suddenly are elevated and creating something else. Obviously you had Cold Cut and even people like Mars, you know, would pump up the volume and stuff like that, but it was all British stuff that came out of
Gary
that.
Esmond, yeah, Acid.
Exactly, yeah. So tell us a little bit about that, because obviously, you know, there was hip hop going on, there was this acid house that was going on. You had a bit of a part in that as well, didn't you, Joe?
Yeah, I worked with Danny Ramplin at Shum Club.
Yeah.
I did the sound system in Heaven.
Right.
In Charing Cross. And, you know, I used to put my sound upstairs, and I was working with, it was a night called Babylon up there.
Right.
And I used to work with Boy George.
Right.
I used to do the warm-up, and Boy George used to play the music.
Right.
And then downstairs was the laser show. They used to have the strobe lights down there, with all the smoke and the strobe lights.
So this would have been about 87, I suppose?
Yes, mid to late 80s. Yeah.
And obviously, you know, there was the big sort of like raves that were sort of like starting to sort of pop up, like Biology and Sunrise and all of these sort of stuff. Yeah. Did you used to cater for those guys as well?
The early days of Sunrise, I used to put the sound system in there. I used to be told, Joey, I'm going to call you later on. You're going to meet me on M25 or M wherever. and then when I go there with the truck, I'm just following a convoy of cars. I don't know where I'm going. Yeah. But this guy, I can't remember his name. I think it's Tony something.
Right.
He used to. That time, mobiles were just getting big. The brick phones.
Big brick phones.
Yeah.
Did you have one?
I think they got me one. Yeah, because I had to keep in touch with those guys on the move. So I did. Yeah. And that was it. I used to do a few early Sunrises.
Right.
Cool. Yeah.
So at this time, were you still doing your sort of like Good Time sound system with Norman?
Yeah, it was mainly with Norman. Warehouses was the
So you were still doing that. Yeah. And when did it sort of come out of Warehouses? Because that must have stopped after a point, but whilst it sort of like got into clubs and stuff. And obviously your popularity, someone's going to poach you, surely, to do other things.
Yeah, it got too corporate, you know, police kept raiding them.
Sure.
Sound limiters kept going up in different. Every club we do, there were sound limiters kept
Yeah.
going off the sound. So, to me, it was I had to sell the sound system, not sell it, but there was no work for it anymore.
Right.
Because all the clubs installed all their stuff.
Mm.
You know, you had buzz biz. They all started putting the same bass bins
Right.
that I had years ago. You know, because they like to model off what I had. Ministry of Sound, all those places.
So all of these
I
places.
influenced all of those guys.
So these places were actually popping up. I mean, did that sort of kill the vibe a little bit once it, like you say, got corporate and it ended up going into clubs? DJs get paid massive money and stuff like that. And did it sort of kill it for you a little bit?
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
Financially as well, yeah.
I'm sure. Well, obviously, you know, the sound man isn't wanted because they've got their own sound system in the club.
Sound.
Right. So what happened with you guys? But obviously, you know, were you still doing the Notting Hill Carnival and stuff like that? Obviously, you guys have had a big name for yourself and still have, you know.
I mean, we were, and then it came to a point where I needed more equipment to make it bigger, and I couldn't raise the funds to do it because I was only playing it like 3 times a year on big occasions.
Right.
So I wasn't raising enough funds to keep the truck going,
Sure.
the amplifiers serviced, you know. So I had to get rid of it. You know?
Right, okay.
And we was hiring in big rigs to come and take over.
So what happened? Because I mean, I know sort of like during the sort of like later 90s and stuff, you guys actually started putting out your Good Times compilations and stuff like that, didn't you?
Yeah. I did something with Soul to Soul. It was in my bedroom.
Right.
And it was a mixture of my dub stuff and
Right.
Soul to Soul Phil from Soul to Soul.
And is this what's behind this on the wall? Yeah, cool. And what other stuff had you been involved in regards to? Because obviously you were a DJ predominantly, but obviously you've had your finger in many pies in regards to the sort of the stuff that's been made. No?
Yeah. It was more Norman started to do compilations. Well, me and Norman.
Sure.
The Good Times compilations. So it was more get compilation, get paid, and then put out stuff that you like.
Sure. And that was predominantly sort of more of the sort of soul stuff, wasn't it, that it was being put out?
Predominantly soul.
Yeah. And they actually go for pretty good money now, don't they?
They do. I've actually got the first few, but they don't go for money,
Yeah, you should have bought them in, Brad.
I should have, actually, yeah.
Just don't think ahead.
Was you still doing the radio in the 90s?
You had radio stations like Choice FM, that was predominantly black station as well. LWR was still there, then you had Solar, and then you had DBC.
Yeah.
What it was, the radio authorities told us that if you want to get a license,
Yeah.
you have to come off the air for 1 year.
Yeah.
Go away, go and do your portfolio, and submit it to the radio authorities.
Yeah.
So we did that, and that's how we got the license. Choice did it as well, but Choice got their license before us because they came on as South London station, whereas Kiss, we wanted London wide, so we had to wait a bit longer. But there was, there's a lot of people working in the city that liked and used to come to our warehouse parties.
Yeah.
One guy wrote into Kiss and said, "I can get you on here." He was a corporate lawyer or something to do with music, and he helped us do our portfolio.
Yeah.
And got us on air.
Right. And this would have been, what, 89, 90?
1991.
Was it 91, was it, that Kiss FM...
We got launched.
And how long were you on Kiss FM after it was a legal station?
I was on there for 8 years.
8 years?
Yeah, 1998 I came off.
Right, okay. Because Kiss FM was still actually good in its in its early years.
Former years.
In its former years. Was that when it was still on the Holloway Road, was it? Or?
Yeah, we're on Holloway Road. But before Holloway Road, we had to move to Trevor Nelson's girlfriend's flat. We had to do Colin Favour's flat.
Really?
Yeah, because they kept moving the aerials.
Oh, yeah, we've had this discussion before.
We didn't want to get busted, so...
Right.
The aerials would go up at Crystal Palace High Street, and by Sunday night, you're busted.
Right.
Then Monday, Tuesday, get another aerial, get it back up there.
Right.
But you had to pay the guys who run any of those shops on Crystal Palace High Street money. Says, look, can we use your roof? Put the stuff up there.
Right. So you had to obviously find someone who weren't going to
They were getting good money because Crystal Palace, we were getting signals to Southend. I was getting letters from Southend.
Right.
Milton Keynes.
Jesus, that's
you're high up there, aren't you?
Wide range, isn't it? Yeah.
It's the best for coverage.
Right.
Yeah.
So from people's girlfriends' flats and stuff to the big place on Holloway Road. So much of a difference. Did you find that it was different as soon as it became
it was
legal?
Because a corporate bought out kids.
Sure.
EMAP.
Yeah.
And everything changed.
Right.
They were just being loyal to the DJs there, but ultimately they wanted to be like Capitol.
Yeah, of course. Well, they wanted to make money because it was a commercial radio station. Yeah. But obviously, you got yourself this lovely award, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah.
When was that?
It was from a group called Enough Respect, and they just said that's the best reggae show they've ever heard.
Wicked.
Ever.
And they moulded it and sent it in to me.
Quite an accolade, isn't it? Yeah. Brilliant.
So Enough Respect, thank you very much.
So in regards to, so obviously in 1998 you sort of and why was that? Was it just because it was too corporate or?
Yeah, it was losing its flavour, and some DJs were literally walking out. Even my brother Norman J, he went on to the BBC. It was just getting too corporate. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that.
Right.
And it was going against what we grew up with. So we said, okay.
Sure. So I mean, after that, what did you do? Obviously, the compilations were still coming out with you and you and Norman. But was there anything in the pipeline for yourself, or was it just?
Not really. I just thought it was
time to.
I tried to get back on the reggae scene a little bit, but
right.
I promoted Shaka a few times. Put him in a few clubs, and then many people came into the scene and started to buy out things. So I couldn't afford to keep it going. So
sure.
That was it, really.
In regards, sorry, Brad.
No, go on. I was just going to say, is that did you still play out occasionally though after that?
Yes, and then it got less and less.
Yeah.
Because it was the restrictions in the club. It was going against my spirit.
Yeah.
Can't smoke anymore. And I'm used to going in the club and, man, I like that big trumpet stuff. The place is full of herb, you know what I mean? You get for me, better atmosphere when the place is smoke, good herb.
Yeah.
And the place is full of speaker boxes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
18 inches pumping in your back, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And every man is happy and building a spliff. And when all that got taken out of it, for me it was the essence that got taken out of it.
Yeah.
So I was just playing to people just want to sit on the floor and drink a beer.
Yeah.
That wasn't, cause to me that wasn't what they didn't come out and listen to music. They just get out of their head.
They don't want background noise. That's all they want.
That's all they wanted.
Yeah.
So for me it didn't have any meaning. So I kind of eased off it.
Fair enough. And was you still picking up music there a lot? Picking up a lot of records still there?
Now and again.
Yeah.
Because obviously you were sent a lot of stuff as well, weren't you?
I was sent a lot from kids, so I still got a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, obviously, because this is a vinyl show. Where were you getting stuff from? I know you were talking early on. You'd be at Daddy Calls in Hanway Street. Your brother would be at Contempos. But where else? Because I've seen the record collection. You know what I mean? and there's some amazing stuff. Obviously, mainly sort of like US pressings plus the UK stuff that you'd have been sent. Where else did you used to go to find records? Where were some of the best places that you used to go or had to go?
There was one right outside Finsbury Park Station. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a little shop. As you come out Finsbury Park Station, it used to be on the corner of Seven Sisters Road and where the bus terminal is now.
Yes.
Right on that corner. And then you had Lesko, you had Stamford Hill. It was a Jewish couple.
Right.
A couple that used to run. And when you go in there, they used to get, proper pre-release stuff there.
Right.
So I'd have to travel from West London just to go to that shop.
And this was for picking up like the reggae sort of stuff, was it?
Yeah, it was the best place to get stuff. And then,
really?
And then Dub Vendor came.
And that was in that...
They were in Labra Grove.
Right.
And then they moved to...
Acton. Oh.
No, Dub Vendor.
Sorry, Dub Vendor.
They had one in Clapham Junction. Yeah, Clapham Junction.
Yeah.
There was a shop there. That was the main one. And then they had one little shop right outside Labrador Station.
Right.
A man called Martin used to so you go in there and get your stuff. He used to get some good stuff.
Right.
And then Greensleeves had their shop in West Ealing High Street
Yeah.
in '76.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Well, I wish it was still
but
there
they weren't
now.
selling reggae then. We used to run a club around the corner at St James Hall.
Yeah.
And we used to go into the shop. Chris must have been about 16, little kid, Chris Cracknell.
Right.
So we used to say to him, why are you playing all this rock and pop stuff? Because his manager was called Chris as well, an Irish guy. Why are you playing all this rock and pop stuff? Why don't you get some reggae? We've got a community here. We don't want to have to travel all the way to Stamford Hill and Brixton to get our stuff. So he said, well, what? So pre-release reggae, man. So he hired a guy called Norman Newton, an Asian-looking guy, and a blonde-haired girl called, I think her name was Hazel. Norman would go, and they would bring the prees back from that side, Brixton, and bring them to West Ealing.
Right.
That's how Greensleeve was born for the reggae. I was there, I witnessed it.
Jesus. Nice.
Well,
there's a few. There's this lovely establishment,
standard
obviously. Yeah, we are. Yeah.
have you got a night? Because obviously you've given us some wonderful memories. But is there a night that stands out as the best night that you did?
What, in playing out?
Yeah, a party that you put on.
I think the highlight on the soul scene was when we put on the JBs.
Right.
Without James Brown. That was at the Forum, Town and Country Club.
I've got the flyer at home.
With the JBs
Yeah.
inscribed, yeah.
Fred Wesley and the
Wesley.
JBs with Bootsy. I've got the flyer. I've got the flyer at home.
And I actually picked up Maceo from the airport, took him to the hotel, and then took him from the hotel to the venue.
How was he?
Apparently, it was an amazing night. I mean, I got the flyer for it, but I didn't go.
We were supposed to use the sound system that was in the Town and Country then.
Yeah.
They used mine, didn't they? So it's like...
Well, it was legendary.
Yeah.
I pulled it off.
Really? I mean, apparently it was an amazing night. They did all the funk classics that had just been released on Urban Classics at the time.
Yeah.
Which you guys get a mention on, don't you? In the back of Urban Classics, there's Shaken Finger Pop,
Right.
Derek Boland, all mentioned as a sort of like thank yous for sort of like helping compile and all that sort of stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if my sound had broke down that night, I would have been... It held out, and it worked much better than the sound system in there. So
Really?
to me, that was the highlight of the sound on that soul scene.
Brilliant.
You ain't got any photos of you or anything like that?
I'll dig up some.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Try and post it on the
Yeah, totally.
And how was Maceo? Did he make nice small talk in the
Maceo
car?
and when he came out, he was waiting for a bus.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yes, they never organised him getting a lift back to the hotel.
Right.
Wow.
I had to pick him up with his trumpet, or whatever, and then he got in the car and he was just cool. Yeah, that was for me.
Yeah, I can
And
imagine.
Bobby Bird.
Oh, yeah, I love Bobby Bird.
Bobby Bird and his wife.
Vicky Anderson.
Vicky Anderson, yeah.
Who was
Obviously,
Carly Anderson's mum.
Yeah.
Yes, they've been to my house. Bobby and Vicky came to my house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, spoke to my mum and stuff like that.
Apparently really nice people.
Very nice people.
Yeah.
Really? And obviously Carleen Anderson was their daughter and she was with Young Disciples.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Everything comes back round to you, mate, in this
it does,
universe.
Basically, the universe according to Joey Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. God, it's amazing. Imagine having Bobby Bird and Vicky Anderson over for dinner. Oh, that'd be
special.
great, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I've still got photographs that they gave us.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I should have brought them, but I've got them.
Fantastic.
Really? Oh, my word. Just to get some scans. Sorry, we're getting off topic here, aren't we? But no, fantastic.
Yeah.
Anything in the pipeline? Obviously, I mean, you don't live in this country for half a
period
year.
of time I went to Ghana.
Yeah.
Because there was this Rasta thing, repatriation, go back to the motherland.
Sure.
But I was one of those that did.
Right.
Yeah.
I went to Ghana in '89. I went to Ghana.
Right.
And then kept going. So I managed to put up a building there in Accra. And so I don't spend a lot of time there like I used to.
Right.
But because I like the summers in London, actually.
Yeah.
They're fantastic here. Yeah,
Oh,
late
I
at
bet
nights.
this-
late
Yeah,
at-
there's a magical
There's
feeling
something
and there's
about
something in London.
Yeah.
being in London at this time of year.
Yeah, even if it rains, but yeah. Fantastic.
So Accra you in? Yeah.
I'm in Accra,
Yeah. What's it like? Crazy place?
It's much better now, but the time I went, it was military rule,
Yeah.
so it was tough.
Yeah.
You know, you got stuff like, you Rasta people from Jamaica, what are you come here for? I said, look, you're the same colour, look at my hair, you know,
Yeah.
I've got wool. you know, I said, you were tired to see my face, you know, you can't get me out of the race. So eventually they embraced me.
But
Yeah.
you've had a couple of gigs over there as well, haven't
That
you?
was going to be my next question.
Yeah, I did actually.
Yeah.
I worked with Rita Marley. I
Right.
did Rita Marley's birthday party over here in her house. Yeah. So
How was that?
it was packed, but it was like where she lived. She lived up in a place called Aburi,
Right,
Aburi, Aburi Mountains,
right,
and she lived in a place called Kitasi. They made her Queen Mother of Kitasi, which is off Aburi Mountains, off
Right.
the main road. And she had a house up there, and you know she shipped in stuff from pub stuff and everything.
right.
So when she had a party, she got in touch with me because I was the only one that was there regular.
Yeah.
There wasn't a regular, and she set up the Rita Marley Foundation there, and I was doing all the bits and pieces for her.
Right. What's she like?
Totally different.
Really?
She just ordinary person.
Really?
Yeah. And her sister works for used to work for BBC,
Really?
which is Miss P.
Okay.
Miss P is her younger sister.
Right.
And Lepke from DBC, he's her younger brother.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and they're here.
Right, okay. And how long ago was that?
This was mid-90s, I would say.
Right, okay.
Mid-90s going on to 2000.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm speaking to you now, me and Rita used to,
Yeah.
she built a studio there actually.
Oh, really?
In the Bury area. She built a big studio there and it got burnt down. I have no idea how it got burnt down.
Foul play.
Sounds like fair play to me.
Yeah, sounds like foul play to me as well.
She'd done it all up nicely, proper entrance and everything. Next thing you know, I heard it got burnt down.
Right.
And what's this one, Jay?
This one, Babadub.
Babadub.
Badadub. There you go. You can say it better than me, I can't.
This
say
one
it.
is called Badadab.
There you go.
It's a track off the album. I deal with roots.
Yeah, and as you can see,
Good times.
good times.
Totally. No, thanks ever so much for coming in. It's been an absolute pleasure. Sort of like finally getting you sat down in a chair and having a chat to you about, well, your life basically. Right, well, Brad.
I'm loving the truck. Is this the
Yeah,
removals?
that was one of my removal van.
The removal van.
Speakers in the back.
So this is in Acton, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
What road's this?
outside my mum's house.
Well, no, we don't want to give out his
Oh.
mum's address,
Right,
really,
yeah.
do we? You know what I mean?
And as you can see, there's a globe there. Is that a globe?
That's right, yeah. World sound.
World famous.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, mate.
Yeah,
That was
thanks
an
for coming
amazing
in.
interview and sharing all your stories and that. I think that we'll
Yeah.
get so many people A, reminiscing over that,
Yeah.
and B, just giving
So many
up.
people thinking, why the hell are you actually talking to these gits instead of somebody proper? But there you go, that's fine.
Why would you not want to come to the
Yeah.
best little record shop in West London?
In South Harrow.
Just opposite South Piccadilly Line Station.
That's why I'm here.
Exactly, that's right. That's it. You can actually sometimes find Joey in here as well.
There
so
you go. See, you get all the stars in here, all
We
the
do.
famous
We
people.
do.
Yeah.
Right, well,
Brilliant.
that's it. Well, cheers, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Nice one.
Love and peace. Peace and
Yeah,
love.
indeed.
Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you very much.
Nice.
Cheers.
Right.